days ago, Maryland took down Indiana for their 15th win of the season. Not bad at all, especially when you consider this is a freshman-heavy team. Anthony Cowan had 15 points. Kevin Herter made 3 3-pointers and had 7 boards. Justin Jackson threw in 11 points. All perfect compliments to the star they have in the form of Melo Trimble. It's been such a great season thus far for Big Ten Frosties all around. Here's a handful of names to know. Miles Bridges missed 7 games with an injury, but he's your top scoring youngster in the league. Amir Coffey drops in 12 points a contest for the Gophers. Jordan Bohannon really makes some big gutsy shots for the Hawkeyes as well. So let's do a Tire Pros campus interview now and check in with our guy, Gary Williams, to continue this talk about freshmen. And let's start with the Maryland Terrapins. Gary, what's your take on this diverse freshman squad the Terps have?
Well, that's a good point, Mike. They are diverse. They all do different things, which is what you need and what Maryland needed this year, losing 4 starters. You come in with a guard like Cowan, who's small, really quick, great ball handler, can penetrate, and you think, well, with Melo Trimble there, how can they use him? Well, they're playing both guys, and it's really tough to defend by other teams. And a guy like Hooter is such a good shooter. Everybody knew that. That was his rep coming in, but he's also a good basketball player. He sees the court. He had 7 rebounds against Michigan the other night, and certainly is a big part of the way they run their offense. And then you get a player like Jackson that has this talent that very few people have to really manipulate with the ball, score at that 6'7" size, and he becomes a matchup problem. And when they want to go small, they can play Jackson at the 4, so it gives them a lot more flexibility in terms of how they run their offense, how they want to play defense.
And they focus all around Melo Trimble, and that becomes a nice little squad you have there, which is a similar situation to what's happening in Iowa. Peter Jok is the guy. He's putting up all the points. But outside of him, Gary, in their top 5 scorers, the other 4 are all freshmen as well.
Well, I think Jok deserves some credit for that because they know, the freshmen know, especially on the road, that Jok's going to be there. He's been through it before. He's dependable. And it looks like when you watch them play, they really enjoy playing with him. And it looks to me like Jok is willing to help the freshmen. In other words, sometimes you get a veteran player that's a little jealous of attention new guys get and things like that. But in Peter Jok's case, he seems to really enjoy being kind of that, leader on the floor that can really help out. And when you have as many freshmen as Iowa or Maryland plays, you need that leadership from the veteran players, no matter how good the freshmen are. And so, Jok has given him that.
Speaking of important freshmen, Michigan State got their big-time freshman Miles Bridges back to go along with Nick Ward, who really stepped up when Bridges was out. What do you see in the green and white freshmen?
Well, Miles Bridges is a man. I saw him play a little bit last summer, and he's not one of those freshmen that needs to get in the weight room or something like that. He's just really a tough guy out there on the floor. But he knows, once again, these guys are coming in now knowing how to play. It used to be a lot of times you got a freshman who was really talented. He had to learn how to play college basketball. But, there's so much things done in the summertime now, so many games they play. They come in pretty experienced, and it doesn't seem a lot of things bother them that used to bother them. Bridges, he handles the ball well. He can get a rebound and take it down a few dribbles, get it to the point guard. He can certainly, he knows how to get open in the offense. And, one of the things that Tom Izzo does, he puts a great deal of demands on every player in his program. And so for a player like Miles Bridges, who might have been able to dominate in high school because of his physicalness, now he's got a coach that's going to take him to that next level. And, he's very fortunate to be playing for somebody like Tom Izzo.
And it's one of those weird things where the injury, in a way, might have helped the team, because while he was gone, we saw Ward step up. We saw Winston step up. And now that they've got Bridges back, after a not very Tom Izzo-like non-conference schedule, Gary, look who's at first place right now in the Big Ten. It's the Spartans.
Yeah, I saw that, and having played against Tom, that doesn't surprise me. What has happened with that? When you lose a player, you can go 2 ways. A player's as good as Bridges. You can just never recover from that loss because he was out for several games, or during that time, you just put it on the other players. We've got to do this. This is the way it goes sometimes. Things don't go the way you want them to, and a guy like Ward has really benefited. Ward is a very good post player, and that's a rarity nowadays, to find those guys with really good post moves, and he's one of those guys that has that ability.
Sometimes, though, a freshman can still be just a freshman, and that's what we saw the other day with Minnesota. Amir Coffey has been wonderful this year, but they play Michigan State. He only has 1 field goal and 4 points, and they end up losing in a huge way to the Spartans, partly because their freshman had an off day.
I think I coached against Coffey's father. I hate to admit that, but I did. Well, what happens when you go on the road, especially to a tough place to play, that can happen to any freshman. And just because freshmen play well right now, there might be a period a month from now where they don't play particularly well for a 2-week period. But that doesn't mean anything because you go through ups and downs, and the more experience you get, the more consistent you usually get as a basketball player. So a player like Coffey, you walk into a Michigan State or someplace like that, and the Big Ten is famous for their tough home court places to play. And all of a sudden, things aren't as smooth, it's not as comfortable, and all of a sudden, here comes a really good team at you that is really playing hard, and all those things factor into it, but he'll be fine. You know, it's just one of those games where hopefully it's a very good learning experience.
From the coach's point of view, what's the hardest part of that freshman learning curve? Is it mental? Is it early on the year being away from home? Is it when February comes around and they're just not used to playing that many games and the physical toll on them? What is it?
Well, I think the first part is you have to understand they're freshmen. Forget freshman basketball players. They're freshmen. Every freshman student a lot of times struggles in some area during their freshman year. So it's not unusual if your freshmen just have days where they're not there in practice. You know, they're just not playing as well as they should have. And you have to talk a lot with freshmen. And it's very important to be off the court time, and your veteran players have a lot to do with the success of the freshmen. So you need those two things. And the thing they have going for them now, they've played a lot more games in different places in the country. They've played on television. These great players, a lot of times they've been the best player in their conference that is recruited to the Big Ten. And the one thing that coaches really struggle with on the court is their defense, because a lot of times in high school, they're told, whatever you do, don't foul. We need you to play 32 minutes the whole game in high school. And so they come in with bad defensive habits, not because they don't want to play, it's because their coaches told them not to foul, stay out of foul trouble. So you got to get that out of them and make sure they understand that, you know, there's a lot of good players here, and we need you to play defense if we're going to have a good team defense.
Before we let you go, Gary, who was your most ready-made freshman that you had in your career?
Most ready-made freshman, I'd say Juan Dixon. He was ready to go the minute he stepped on the court. He had this chip on his shoulder, which a lot of great players have, where he wanted to prove people wrong. They were saying he was too small to play in the Atlantic Coast Conference back then and things like that. So he wanted to play, and you just had to turn him loose. And you know, guys like that really make you good coaches. That's what those guys do, because they come in ready to play.
Well, it's too bad no one ever heard of Juan Dixon, and he never did anything at the University of Maryland. Gary Williams, as always, great for your time, sir. Thanks a lot.
Mike, great. Thank you. Good to see you.